Never have tonight again. So enjoy every moment of it. And I think that's what's helped me. There's been tough times in this business, is saying, none of us know if we have tomorrow. Karen Carpenter. So find some joy in today.
Helen Welch, Karen Carpenter, mental health and music. About music, mental health, Karen Carpenter. Maybe there'll be a little bit of music. Check it out now.
Hello, you've arrived at the Mental Health and Eating Disorder Podcast, helping you hold hope by capturing stories and inspiring recovery.
Helen Welch, I so appreciate you just explained a busy night in the studio doing what you do, and you got here bright and early for me, so thank you for joining me to talk about the Carpenters and your music.
Great to be here. I liked that you said something at the beginning there. I'm not sure if it went on the video. You said, so we've only just begun or something, which is cue for a song.
That is so fun. Do you know that all week, and I don't know if it's an accident, I've been singing On the Day That You Were Born. And I'm like, why am I singing it all day? I'm singing about the angels. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Close to you. You knew I was coming to get you.
And I'm sure Karen in her heavenly place is like, please don't sing my music. Please don't do that. But it's funny. So we'll see if there's any other little, cues or puns that we can do based on their music. But we are going to talk about the Carpenters and Karen and her career. But of course, you are our vehicle for that. Can you tell us a little bit about who Helen Welch is and what you do in this beautiful world?
Yes, sure. Let's see if I can do a potted version. So as you can probably tell, although I live in Ohio, I am not from Ohio. I moved here from London in 2003 to be with my husband, who is from the United States. And I am a professional vocalist, entertainer, and producer. I started life doing musical theater for 10 years, which was great training. I then moved into being a freelance vocalist, singing with BBC Big Band and Glenn Miller Europe and Opus One. And then I started producing my own shows because I have all the creative juices were going crazy and I didn't want to be boxed in by somebody else telling me what to do and what to sing, although that was great training. And then I have to say I never had sung a Carpenters song in public. I was what I would call, I was a CCF, a closet Carpenters fan. And my mum used to play the Carpenters when I was young, amongst many other things that I liked. I wasn't just a Carpenters fan. But one night I was at a jazz club here that I got a residency at, and it was a very noisy night. And I ended up singing this Carpenter song, and I said to the band, let's do this tune. I'd had the music written out, and they looked at me and rather scornfully said, Carpenter. And I said, well, no one's listening, so let's do it. So we started singing this song, and I tell this story in the show, and the whole place went silent. And at the end, everybody went nuts. And the band and I all looked at one another and said, well, that was not what we were expecting. Wow. The very next day, because I was new to the United States, I didn't know who, what, when, and how. We came to this venue and I very quickly realized that this probably wasn't the best fit for me. It was a jazz club and it was full of leather-clad bikers. And I thought, they're just not going to like what I'm about to do.
I don't know.
And the band jokingly said, do a Carpenter song. And I thought, well, we may as well get this over with. And, they can ask me to leave. So we did the same thing. I started singing this Carpenter song. Not only did the whole place go quiet for a moment, but all the bikers started to sing along.
I love that.
Oh, this light bulb went off in my head and I began to collate more Carpenter's songs. I produced a show that was very much copying what they do. I didn't like it at all because that's not who I am. I don't see the point. I know there's a place for it in life, but personally for me, I don't want to copy what somebody else just did very well. So we put the show away and I didn't want to do it anymore. And then in 2017, my album Spellbound was up for a Grammy nomination, 2016. And it came to the notice of a media mogul, Michael Jensen, in California. And we ended up having a conversation. And he said, I see you've done a Carpenter show. You really should do that, You sound a lot like her. And I was like, this thing won't go away.
Following you.
So I went back to the drawing board, reproduced it with my current group of musicians who are spectacular human beings. And we said, what are we good at? We're good at doing what we do the way we want to do it. So we reimagined the songs, recorded an album. The rest is history. We've been touring it since 2017. We sold out Playhouse Square in Cleveland 3 times. We just did the big show at Severance Hall, which is the home of the Cleveland Orchestra. And it's going from strength to strength. But obviously during that time, I did a huge amount of research on Karen and Richard. There we go.
Wow. One, I didn't realize how long ago the Reimagined album show started. And was there an album to go with that as well?
Yeah, let me see. I might not get my timelines right. I think it was 2019 March. We recorded, we'd been touring the show for a while, and Playhouse Square wanted to present the show. And I wanted a vehicle. I needed something special, to go along with that. So I spoke to David Green, who runs Playhouse Square, and said, how about if we do an album and launch the album? We went into the studio and, for example, Close to You, which you were singing earlier this week, I saw. I heard it in 3. So it's in 4. Oh, why do birds suddenly? And I thought, well, I'm not going to re-record it like that. I hear it as a jazz waltz. So, oh, why do birds suddenly appear every time you are near? And Joe, my piano player and my musical director, wrote all these delicious harmonies. We recorded the album, and we launched the album in 2019 to a sold-out Playhouse Square.
Oh, that is fabulous. And everything we talk about here, I will put in the show notes so that if people say, I want that album, I want to know how to get there, we'll have everything scripted. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit too about how to have access to everything you have done. I got little shivers when you started singing, because I haven't seen your live show. Our owner here, Ann, did, and that's what inspired her to go, whoa. Not only is this person amazing and we had the best time and we just have tickets to her next show, I think she'd just be a great person to talk about Karen Carpenter. So that brings me to the point that you said is, as you went through this process, you didn't just play her music and learn it. You learned about her. You did some research. And what did you find in your journey to learn about her and her band and her family?
Yes, I wanted to. So I reached out to Richard and asked if he would allow me to produce this show. I wanted his permission. And I explained to him that I wanted to tell the stories of the songs and not necessarily talk about all the negativity that we so often hear that surrounds the Carpenters, because I felt like the Carpenters, that negativity overshadows sometimes the music.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't want to copy his songs. So I got several books, I got movies, I got bootleg movies, all sorts of things that I could read and watch to find out really more about the songs and how they came about. And people loved the show because that's what we talk about. We only touch briefly on Karen's tragic early passing, but we talk about things like Goodbye to Love, that Richard was watching a movie starring Bing Crosby, and it's all about a struggling songwriter and his greatest composition, Goodbye to Love. But you never actually hear the song in the movie. And Richard thought, wow, what a great title for a song, and began writing his own. And he imagined a rather unusual guitar solo to happen in the song. So Karen calls this rock guitarist, and he comes in, and Joe Pelusi, and plays the guitar solo. And they actually received hate mail for putting a rock guitar solo in a ballad. It's the first time anybody had ever done that. And we think that's the really commonplace nowadays. The Carpenters were, they really were trailblazers in many ways. So I tell all those stories, but I also learned, of course, a lot about Karen and her struggles with her eating disorder.
Well,
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just think what's interesting is when we talked about this podcast, because Anne was just so excited. She was in her ADHD. I have to have Helen. You had said to me, I'm not sure how much I can inform that. And because your passion is about her as the performer and their global impact. And I love that. I love that you were so authentic about who this person is. And I knew you'd be good to interview because you see her as a whole person. And we want anyone with a mental health issue or disordered eating to be seen as a whole person.
Yeah.
So I think you're a great voice for her.
Thank you.
And so she was a trailblazer in the music world. And do you think that she was this is crazy because I know that has a huge, huge reputation, but was she undervalued because of the mental health piece of it? Did people not recognize her either as a trailblazer or through her prolific music abilities? Because her name was huge, but
yeah, massive. I think no, I in my opinion, I would say she's known by many as one of the finest alto singers that ever lived. There's never been another voice like it. I think what is so interesting for me is that as a performer, people see us on stage. Sorry, I'm shutting my eyes because I'm trying to word this carefully. And it can be a very lonely life. But what people see on stage is, in their eyes, is this, in Karen's case, an attractive, beautiful young lady who's slim. Gosh, we all aspire to be slim for some reason, who's got this gorgeous voice. She must be so happy. How could she possibly be unhappy? And, I remember when I met my husband and I said to him, I've toured like that. I've been where you get on stage and it's sparkly dresses and makeup and everybody's laughing and everybody from the audience goes home and you go back to your lonely hotel room.
Yeah.
To sit there until the next day when you walk out on stage. And you put your glittery dress on and all your makeup and you laugh and you smile and you make everybody happy and they all go back to their houses cheering and laughing and you go back to your lonely hotel room. And it is a really odd life. And she was extremely young. She was 19 when she was signed.
Oh, I didn't realize how young she was.
19 years old. And Richard's 22. So, I swear if I was president, I would make it illegal for, it's such a dangerous business to be in until your feet are on the ground. And I would say, I'm 50 something now. I would say I'm about ready for fame. I think I could maybe handle it now. And I've had a very small taste of it. And I'm very glad my feet are very firmly on the floor because it's a really bizarre business to be in. And I can see why, so many turn to drugs, they turn to alcohol. There's an enormous pressure to be perfect all the time. And when you're feeling ill, you have to get up on stage and you have to smile and the show must go on. And it's interesting, when I meet people in my day-to-day life who say, I called off work today because I had a stomach upset, or I called off work today because I had laryngitis, or I called off work today because, I got diagnosed with breast cancer a few years ago. I still walked out on stage to do the show and I had to make time for the surgery and I still walked out on stage 5 weeks later to do the show. So it's a tough business and everybody sees the glamour side of it.
That's such a good point. Thank you so much for bringing that up. The vulnerability of being in a performance environment when that doesn't show your true story. And eating disorders and mental health are these hidden. They're often hidden. They live in the silence. And for somebody who's struggling, there it is. There's your silence. There's that horrible, cold, lonely hotel room. Yeah. So maybe performers are at more risk. And when I work with dancers and people from all different types of performance, even our young people without that fame, you said, can be so dangerous. And it puts them, I bet, at a higher risk because, like you said, maybe they're not ready. They're not ready to hide their story and come out like you were. And thank you for being willing to go on the stage after dealing with your own medical challenges. That's gigantic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to
Wow.
be very disciplined. But yes, I think that when you talk about dancers, I've worked in theatre with dancers, all they were ever doing was actually thinking about what they couldn't eat. Yeah, because of the pressure of looking. Now that things are changing. Things are changing. I went to see the Neil Diamond show at Playhouse Square a couple of weeks ago. Beautiful Noise. And it was so wonderful to see such a colorful cast. And I don't mean skin, I mean in every way. Different shapes and sizes and heights and skin colors and hair. And yeah, it was very refreshing. Things are changing. I mean, if you go to the store now, they will have, different mannequins of different sizes and, things are changing. But I
hope
think
so.
yeah, there's still a lot of work to do as far as women and what we're expected to look like, I think.
Absolutely. And you mentioned how with Karen, people looked at her as an icon of sort of the social ideal. This is what people should look like. She was,
Yes.
beautiful by her genetics, and she had a slim body that people might have thought was because of her genetics, but instead it was coming from a disordered place, and it was a damage to her body, not a beauty.
Yep.
So all that comes with being a performer, and you made a great point that when you're young and you go out there's like that increased vulnerability. Have you seen along the way, since this is a truth, especially for young people, you've been doing this, I think, most of your life, any supports out there? Did you notice anyone or opportunities where mental health is focused on, or anyone starts that language or conversation?
No.
I asked it because I felt like I had to. And in some areas they do. Like I had a police chief on. He's like, yeah, we do, 3 things a year for mental health. But you would think where we need it the most, perhaps. No.
I would agree. No.
Really? No.
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 No. Lose the weight, lady, is what they would say.
So, and as women, and again, Karen being a trailblazer for women too, because she got up there, she sang, she played, she played the drums, like she did so many things. Did she get her voice heard though? I guess that makes me think maybe she had a voice that could have been heard in the 70s and 60s. I don't know that she would have had a platform.
No, I think that it's funny because I remember exactly where I was at when they announced that she died. And I was so sad because I just loved her voice. And what's so interesting for me is that I didn't think I was a very good singer when I was young. I actually wasn't a very good singer. And I couldn't find the right teacher. And my mother was a light opera singer, so I felt like I needed to sound like her. So I was really trying. And Karen allowed me to be an alto. She gave me permission to know that it was okay to be an alto. Because in those days, if you weren't a soprano, you were nothing. And so I remember I remember singing along to her songs. And then I remember where I was when she died, and they mentioned the word anorexia. And I don't think I'd ever heard of it. I was 12 years old.
What year did she die, Helen? What year was it?
Oh, gosh, I can't remember right now.
It was the early 70s, wasn't it, though? Somewhere in there?
Hang on. I mean, if I did the math, I could figure it out.
I was just curious. I think it was, someone's Googling it right now.
772.
Yeah, it was early 70s, yeah. But go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you. You said when you heard it.
So she, and they announced anorexia, and I'm thinking, what's that? And then they went on to say, this eating disorder. In those days, we all thought anorexia was women who wanted to be slim, so they starved themselves.
Right.
So she was the first, I think I'm right in saying, I'm sure you'll know better than me though. She was the first person, she really brought anorexia to the forefront.
Yeah.
Because she was the first big star to die from the damage caused by her eating disorder. She was actually on the way up when she passed away, but I think her heart gave out.
Refeeding syndrome. And back then we didn't know enough of the biology of renourishing a body, and she actually was just also renourished incorrectly. So it could have been prevented. If it was a modern time, we probably would have been able to keep her alive, which is sad because people weren't researching, like to your point, or doing much about eating disorders because it was that freaky word for those people that have nothing to do with us, that live somewhere else, that have different lives and are shameful. And
yes,
we have only recently got farther.
Wow. Yeah, no, just the misunderstanding of, gosh, they just doing it because they want to be slim. What a silly reason to do that, you know? And from what I've learned reading about Karen, it was and also many years ago when I was in London, I had some, therapy, went to some counseling. And after I'd finished, she was an amazing woman and was so helpful. When I started researching the show, I reached out to her in London and said, could you talk to me a little bit about anorexia? Because I've done some reading, but she was telling me how it's more about control. And I really began to understand that in a deeper, more personal way because of the crazy business I'm in. And so Karen got thrown to the forefront at a very early age. They were touring ridiculous, grueling touring schedule. So lonely hotel rooms. They were only with people who were in the tour group. So they never got to have romantic relationships or go on dates or do all the normal things young 20-somethings should be doing. She was whatever this means, chubby, I'm quoting, teenager. She loved her fried chicken. She loves eating. And that was brought to her attention as they started to sing live. And I think that, so the amalgamation of, being seen as not physically looking the way they wanted it to look, along with feeling a little out of control. And how interesting is this? She, I think, was quite an introvert. So am I. A lot of performers are. And people misunderstand that word too. They think that means that we can't speak. It really just means that we prefer small groups of people. We like groups of two. We like going to the theater. We don't like big parties, So when you're thrown into the world of entertainment, I'm never happier than when I'm on stage in front of 14,000 people. But ask me to go to a party where there are 20 people, I would rather scoop my eyes out with spoons. So
Thank you for that graphic.
So she is being forced into all this stuff that makes my toes curl just talking about it,
Early 20s, 19
in
into
her early 20s. Yes. I mean, I've learned to deal with it now, but even now, my manager might say, would you like to go to this event where it's a blah, 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 and, so-and-so is going to be there and so-and-so famous is going to be. And the first question I always say is, do I have to be there for a career reason? And he might say, no, I thought you'd like to go for fun. And I say, no,
That's not my kind of fun.
So imagine all these things happening that are beyond her control. So what can she control?
That's right.
She can
And
control
eating disorders at a time she was so young when this happened to her, they also can be a function of your identity and they can become your identity. And that's why they can take such a grasp on, because it becomes this way that you connect with the world. So it is a coping thing as well. And she needed something to grasp onto. And that's what makes it so hard to get rid of it. Because even if she developed who she was, she may not have truly known. She knew she was who people told her she was, I suspect. Outside of that, I'm guessing, though, and thank you so much. The way you said that was beautiful, of what she had to deal with and why it made her vulnerable in that world. Did she leave us a legacy? Where is there, and like you said, everyone talks about her anorexia, and I think that is a huge, it definitely discounts her value, but did she give us a legacy? Do you think that we started to grow from that? Did you see anything where anything looked like it changed after that? You were probably pretty young then too, though, to recognize stuff.
I was very young. I mean, I would say just in my research in the last few years of singing the show, talking to people afterwards, I have to believe that by bringing it to the forefront, that was a good thing. I really think that in that regard, it made people sit up and realize that it's a real disease. Is that the right word? It's
disorder,
a real disorder.
It is all of that. It is all of that.
Needs, it's not about losing weight, and it needs
I wish it was that easy.
Yeah. And so I really do think that if people of my generation say anorexia, usually they'll say Karen Carpenter. So if anything, she did do that in an amazing way. What disappoints me is that And this one of my long-term goals with this show is I would love to bring it to a bigger platform to illustrate the joy that this music can bring and bring all the positive things about what both Richard and Karen did to the forefront.
Absolutely.
And that's
Is
really
that the vibe of your show? Is your show, does it lean into the verve of it and the passion? Is that what someone would expect?
And people go out laughing and toe tapping. It's funny, it's cheeky, it's, it's refreshing and so what you're not expecting.
I love
Full
that.
of joy. And yeah, we are hoping to bring it to even bigger stages. I hope we do. But Karen, and after the shows, I always meet and greet people, and some people will come up and say, gosh, that was so amazing, but isn't it so sad that she, yeah.
Hey, you're like, that's not what we're doing here. We're joyful.
Yes. Isn't it so sad that she had anorexia? And I think, how can I change this? It's like, like you said earlier, it just identifies her, and I'm trying to get past that.
Yeah. And where it identifies her, can we grow from that and learn something from it and be active and not just say, oh, poor Karen. Instead, we should say, what can I learn from Karen's story? This beautiful songbird. How can we build from that? And it sounds like you're doing that. You're showing people joy and happiness and present moment. That's wonderful. And their music is like that.
And a lot of people, because they're so suffocated by all that other negative information, this show delivers, so many fun stories, and they'll come up afterwards and say, oh, I had no idea that's how it came about. Or, she used to sing actually very quietly. And so they used a microphone that's super close to her mouth. And on some recordings, you can actually hear what we call a lip smack. And these days, you actually go through a recording and you can
get rid of them.
All those lip smacks. Yeah.
You got to get rid of the pops. Yeah.
Well, on pops. Yeah. And any sibilance. But she sang very quietly. One of my favorite stories, if you don't mind me sharing it.
I would love if you would share it.
At the beginning of the show, there's so many parallels to Karen and I that I did not know until I read about her. So I didn't think I was a very good singer. I avoided singing like the plague. Everything was wrong. It was too high. I sounded like a strangled cat. And when I found Karen's albums of the Carpenters and I sang along, I remember thinking, well, I can do this and I sound okay. Well, when I read about Karen, what happened was that Richard was the musician in the family. Karen was a tomboy. She played baseball and sports. She admired her brother and loved listening to him, but had nothing to do with music. And he wrote a song one day called You'll Love Me, and it happened to start on a really low note for a female voice. And he asked Karen if she would sing it. And so she sang the first line, they say we're too young to ever know a love, but you're everything that I've been dreaming of. And in Richard's words, out came that sound. And he said, my gosh, now I know what key to put the song in to suit these rich alto voice. And then she went on to get some really good singing training. But whenever she talked to her about her voice, she always used to say, the money's in the basement. And I tell that story in the show because it's exactly the same thing that happened to me. I sang really badly until I found Karen. And then I went, okay, I can do that.
I can go down here. I can live in this.
This is my land. Yes, this is my happy place. So it's like there's a double story going on. The one about Karen years ago, and then Helen, who finds her voice through Karen finding her alto voice. And when we reproduced the show, up until that point, we'd used two keyboards, drums and bass. And the second keyboard was an auxiliary keyboard doing guitar and strings and oboes and all the extra stuff that Richard would include in his arrangements. And somebody said to me, you need a guitar player. And I thought, you're right. We do need a guitar player. So Joe and I auditioned for guitar players. And it's so interesting when I told you the story a minute ago about Goodbye to Love. Karen brought in this rock guitarist, Tony Peluso, fop-haired, good-looking rock guitarist. You know, he lays down the solo for Goodbye to Love and went on and joined the band permanently. We auditioned for guitar players, and I do some teaching. And in the studio next door to mine is a guitar teacher, Charlie Trenter. We're both introverts, so we both kind of go, hi, yeah, okay, bye, you know. That was the sum total of our conversation. So he comes in to the audition, and I said, Charlie, I never thought you would like the Carpenters. I mean, he's this tall, fop-head rock guitarist. He said, yeah, I love the Carpenters. My mum loved the Carpenters. And he stood there and he ripped off this guitar solo, sang the harmonies in Goodbye to Love, and we hired him on the spot, you know. And he came and joined our band. Again, very sort of parallel story to the one of Richard and Karen.
Oh, I love that. I don't think I realized, sort of how you guys were on such a similar path musically.
Yeah,
and that's what matters. That's what you're exploring in your show. Now, the show that we're talking about, that is Superstar, the Carpenters Reimagined, correct?
It goes out under two titles. Sometimes we call it Superstar, the songs, the stories, the Carpenters. The album is definitely Superstar, the Carpenters Reimagined. Yeah.
And I know you have a show coming up, Carpenters Christmas. Is that happening too? Are these revolving shows, or am I getting something confused?
We do have a show called Carpenters Christmas. The one coming up in Cleveland, though, is called A Little More Naughty Than Nice.
Oh, please tell me about the naughty.
I love you for that. So the band and I were in the car one day driving through some state or other to a show.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, it would be really fun to do a show where you sing all the wrong songs for, you know, as a holiday show. The, 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover. Hit the Road, Jack, you know, when you want your in-laws to leave. They've been staying with you for too long. And Brian, my bass player, yelled from the back seat, A Little More Naughty Than Nice. I said, that's such a great title. So I started thinking, how could we put this together? So I got together with the Eric Dregney, who runs an amazing 16-piece big band called the Scatch Anderson Orchestra.
Ooh.
And the Maltz Performing Arts Center, which is near Beechwood, a beautiful, amazing space, yes, said they would love to do it. So we're going to we've done it as a small band. We did it in a very small way at the Bop Stop last year in Cleveland. So we're doing our first big band version of this. We're going to be doing things like Hey Big Spender.
Yes.
Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. Can't Buy Me Love. Things like, more babies are conceived at Christmas time than any other time of the year.
I'm a September baby, so I am proof.
So
I am a Christmas love baby.
I love it. So we're doing a Cole Porter song. He was the king of double entendres, called Too Darn Hot. We are doing some nice, pretty stuff in there too. We're doing Home for Christmas, which I wrote. We're doing Silent Night. We're doing Winter Wonderland. But all of it is really swinging. And we're doing Let the Good Times Roll. Yeah. And then about 2 weeks ago, I found myself writing a song called A Little More Naughty Than Nice. And so we were videoing that last night. That's what we were doing because it just wrote itself. The best songs always do. So we're going to include that in the show. Yeah.
So this show is a combo. It's not just your Carpenters vibe. This is a different side of your musical abilities.
Yes, completely. Yeah. Because I've produced a number of different shows. I don't just do Superstar. I do the First Ladies of Song, all about the trailblazing women. I do Beatles Come Together, the Beatles Reimagined, where we turn Beatles songs on their heads. And then this, there's I just can't sit still. Most artists I know do the same show all the time, but I like doing other things, so keeps me sane. So
and you sounds like you should share your voice in all these different ways. So I'm glad you're offering all this different variety. It's awesome. This sounds like a great show. And again, I will put in the notes where to find, and I know your website puts a lot of this out there too, so I know that. And is that HelenWelch.com?
HelenWelchC.com.
Like Welch's grape juice.
Yes, I wish they were my family, but they're not.
Well, don't we all? Because then we'd be in a studio doing this, and I would have paid for you to get a hotel, and we'd be going to lunch afterwards.
I'd arrive in my Rolls Royce.
Right? We're gonna get there. We're making our visions even on a small scale. I guess this is a tough question because I know you don't. We're the mental health people, but what do you think we could use in the world for performers and for women particularly, because we seem to be in even increased vulnerability. What could help with some mental health? What do we need that's not there that you think could help young people, not young people, anybody dealing with the challenge in the performing world? How do we identify it and help them? That's a broad question, but
yeah, that's a real tough one.
it is. Sorry. I think it's on my list.
I'm thinking about, so for example, I belong to the Ohio Arts Presenters Network. I used to belong to Equity.
Yeah. From your musical theater.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, they may already be in place.
Maybe. Yeah.
Because somehow you have to reach the performers that are on the road. So you need, of course, there's social media, and there may be groups on social media where you can reach people. So
or their unions. You were
Right.
the things you were talking about are like the unions where they come together, where they are protected,
Yeah.
and maybe that is there, but if it's not, then we're saying we need more access for people.
Some way to reach them. Ohio Arts Presenters is a presenters network of theaters that help Ohio artists and presenters to come together, so it's a great way for an artist to sell a show and for a presenter to see shows that are available. And I help and mentor young and upcoming artists to help them get their shows up to a level that a presenter would want to book them. And, that's potentially, and there are lots of those. There's the Arts Midwest people. There's, they're in every state. That could be a way of reaching artists. But I feel like the more vulnerable ones are probably in musical theater.
Really? Yeah.
No, I'm not sure.
No,
maybe. And pop, I have no idea how you reach those.
I think we opened this conversation. I think just the fact that people like you are willing to come up and talk a little bit and share. And I think the louder we get, maybe we will see it more and make it more normalized. And
it's not, like you say, it's overall mental health. It's not just eating disorders.
Right.
It's anything that, Karen was, I've never thought she was that good. And there's a wonderful story where John Lennon stops her in the street and says they were huge Carpenters fans, Paul McCartney and John Lennon. And they stopped her in the street and said, we just love your voice. And she never believed it. And I have the same challenge. And as a teacher with my students, and when I do master classes as I travel around the country, I'm very quick and make sure I tell students that 4 or 5 times a day, I probably find myself saying, why are you doing this? Are you really any good? Who are you kidding? What are you doing? Find another job. Do something else. You're not that good. And it happens every day without fail. Now I have tools because I have a lot of self-awareness. I think that's so important for anybody in the entertainment business. Have that. Okay, there's that little voice again. Here he comes, right?
That narrative.
So you have to start counteracting it with, I'm anointed, I'm blessed, I'm creative, I'm, receiving all good things, I'm talented, I am, and I have this. Go through the alphabet. How far can I get?
Good for you. Your personal self-statements, if you will, the things
that
that
what
you
they
do to
are? Okay.
counteract your little default narrative. And, disordered eating, that is one of the key things that comes with it, is that self-doubt, self-shame, self-judgment, which as you say that, when you think of how performers are just kind of, you're always in a situation of questioning a little bit because you're not getting constant reinforcement for that.
No.
It puts you at risk. You're already doing that in your career. And then the needle disorder comes by and says, yeah, you're right. You're not good enough. Come to me. I'll help you out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And I've met piano players that have heart defects because they've been on steroids. Because when you're touring and you get sick and you have to go out on stage, prednisone will take all the swelling out of your vocal cords. Or if you're a piano player and you're just exhausted and you feel like you just can't get on stage again, prednisone makes you feel like Superman or Wonder Woman. And they'll take them and that will help them through the next night. It's a Judy Garland story, right?
Yeah.
The prednisone makes you feel up, and then you have to take something to help you sleep.
Right.
So then the next day you have to, take something to keep going. So then you have to take something to sleep. And I've been there too, where you have to, luckily again, I've been very careful, but sometimes you've got to walk out on stage and you've got to take something to help you sing because you've lost your voice or you've got a cold or you just feel exhausted or whatever that is.
Stakes are so high. It's not like you can say, hey, can we schedule that meeting for next, in a day or two? There's all these people that have given their time, their money, their focus to you, and the obligation feels so loud. I guess this makes me really credit people when they do take a break. It must not be easy to say, hold up, I got to take care of me.
Yeah. I was probably one of the few people, we were balls to the wall in 2019. And when COVID hit, we were having some of our own personal medical things here at home. And I remember being in the car. We were in Georgia. And I remember shutting my eyes and thinking, oh, gosh, thank gosh for that. I get to go home and stop for a minute.
And that was a gift for some of us to be able to learn how to stop and to see what it felt like for our souls to catch up with our bodies.
Yeah, I learned a big lesson. And I don't know why. I think I had learned it before, but it's a good reminder. I realized, quality of life is much more important than working lots and lots. And I won't ever let that happen again. It's really important to have balance. And it's okay. But again, in this business, especially with social media, I have to remind some of my musicians sometimes because they're victims of it too when they see everybody on social media posting, and you have to. I am expected to post.
People want to see what you're doing.
They'll look to check that you are promoting their concert.
Yeah.
You have a responsibility to market and promote your show. And that's part of the job. And I get that. And I don't I criticize that at all. So therefore, my social media presence is, hi, it's Helen Welch here. And I've got a show coming up at the Maltz. A little more naughty than nice, join me. And everybody sees me, right? So what does another singer do who sees me? They say, oh my God, she's so successful. She's at the Maltz and look at her and all that. And I'm not doing that. And I'm so inadequate. And so it's this, we're almost as artists creating this awful hurricane. So,
social media,
one of my musicians will look and see that another musician is successful in doing this. And aren't I useless? I'm not that successful. So we're all competing against one another and we're all creating this.
Yeah. And it's kind of this, just like what happened to Karen with the body image, that was being created in the culture of the 50 years prior to her, right around that time.
Yeah.
So we have to take care of ourselves. We have to, like you said, you've gotten help. We've all gotten help. We have to fill our well and make sure if we're in a situation that's that straining that we ground ourselves. We check our authenticity. We get support for our mental health.
Yeah. And understand, I think having an understanding of, you've got to be able to filter what you see on social media and understand that it's really just for artists. Most of the time, it's just a newspaper. It's a vehicle that we have to use to promote shows. And it doesn't mean that you're inadequate,
right?
Because you're not doing that show or you're not performing there yet or,
Yeah. And for anyone using it to not be like, why am I not at that party? How come they're on that vacation?
Yeah.
Why does their car look like that? How come they look better at 4? And, it really does create a lot of that. So we have to work on our inner strength and our trust in ourselves. And it sounds like you've had to do that to get to a place where you can manage this career and continue to manage it and stay standing. And I can tell you love it. I see the passion in you. I don't think you're doing it despairingly. I think you want to do it.
No, I do love it. Downtime is the devil's playground, but it's a good, yes, it's, too much downtime.
Maybe you come up with all these new ideas.
Maybe I do. Yeah, maybe I do. And that's why I like doing teaching is very therapeutic for me, because it's all about putting the focus on somebody else and helping them grow. And I think I've had a lot of experiences to help. And my students joke that I should be a psychotherapist as well as a teacher.
Why is that?
I've had so many amazing turnarounds. I've had students, a young lady who self-harmed. She came, obviously she was having professional help as well, but she came for singing. Yeah. Sometimes we talked, sometimes we sang. It weren't, and knowing that it gave her another focus was awesome. And she stopped and her self-harming, and her parents sent me wonderful emails saying, thank you so much for bringing, and something else to her. I had a young lady who had anorexia. She started singing, and she, also was having professional help, but through her music, it's so therapeutic.
Music therapy, right? That's an entire leg of what we do, a branch of it. And I think 100 times a day, I say this to a client: if you can find something else that matters to you, that's meaningful, that taps into your soul, that's going to help the anorexia or the mental health feel smaller. And you did that for these people. You helped them find that.
It's an amazing job. And I have another student now who it's not mental health, but amazing story. She had surgery and they paralyzed her vocal cords during surgery. And so she had a prosthetic vocal cord, and she did her first solo tune last night. It brought me to tears. It was so amazing, But you're right. It's the singing or whatever it is, the tennis, whatever you do, takes the attention off you. And for me, I used to say to myself, I don't want to have a pity party. I need to, and one of the biggest aha moments for me was when I have been having a Helen pity party, is that if I help somebody else, it really helps me.
And you're in a position to do that. You've built yourself to where you can teach and guide and mentor.
Yeah. But even if you can't do that, can you call a friend who's having a struggle? Can you take someone's dog for a walk? Can you, I had a student whose husband was Alzheimer's. She just liked the conversation. Give her a call. Can you help somebody else? Because it will make you feel enormously better and take the attention away from what you're feeling sorry for yourself about.
That's a wonderful insight. And maybe that goes back to what we talked about earlier. What do we need? Maybe we need to be safer for other people and be available. And like you said, recognize that, let me focus, let me do something for someone else, and let that compassion come back to me. Once you put it out in the universe, it comes back to you. You just don't always know when or where.
Always.
It's coming. It's coming. Yeah.
Yes.
You've shared so many beautiful, beautiful illustrations of Karen's life, but also of the performance career, of your own career. Is there a word or two that you would use to describe Karen's legacy or Karen's career? I know that's a big ask, but I got it. I know it's so mean. I have to take a picture of something later. It's fun.
I don't know how I could do it in a word or two. I would say, she was iconic. She cut through their music. I would have to say it's a Karen and Richard thing. Richard gets forgotten, and he shouldn't be, because he was instrumental in making those arrangements, and those arrangements are what made those songs so amazing. And then there was Karen's voice, which was the icing on the cake. They cut through, interestingly enough, at a time when it was Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, and the Rolling Stones, which I find fascinating. Nobody wanted that. Nobody at A&M wanted the Carpenters. And it was Herb Alpert who said, yes, we're going to sign them. And they cut
That's who it
through.
was.
Yes, Herb
Really?
Alpert signed them. I met him. He told me the story of how he signed them. Yes.
That's
And
amazing.
he pressed play on a cassette, and heard this amazing voice coming through his speakers, is what he said. And he wanted to sign them straight away. So it's just this, I guess, the unforgettable voice is what I would call her. You press play, you hear that voice for 2 seconds, you know exactly who it is.
Oh, you do. It's that iconic, unforgettable voice.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to remember. But then somewhere in there, we need to remember to take care of each other.
Yes.
That voice, it should be beautiful and passionate and wonderful, but also maybe just a little memory that we need to do that.
And there is a little melancholy, I think, in her voice, isn't there? Don't you think?
Yeah, there is. And I think that's why we relate to her. There's a vulnerability in that she's not just singing about when it is an upbeat song, we can feel her. And maybe that's why she speaks to people, something in her pain translated through the music.
Yes.
And everyone has pain. Yeah. What about your journey? Do you have a word for your amazing path? We learned a lot about you too. How would you define your path in this world? Usually I ask about recovery, but in this case, it's just your whole bloody world.
Roller coaster.
Roller coaster, yes. As most people in the performing arts, right?
Yes. I've been so blessed. Oh my gosh. I've had so many incredible opportunities. My three top opportunities would be singing on Broadway in Smokey Joe's Cafe, singing the national anthem for the Cleveland Browns. I've done twice.
Love it. Oh, I got to find that and watch it.
It's on YouTube.
Put it in the show notes.
I always joke. I say 80,000 people came to see me sing.
Well, they did. Excuse me. Yes, they did. Empowered female.
It was one of them. And what was really special about it was I really feel like, Cleveland has taken me as their own. I feel very loved. It's palpable. To be asked to sing the national anthem of a country that I've moved to,
right,
was very, very special.
Yeah. We love you here.
Yeah, it's such an honor. And I will never forget that. And then my third highlight would be most recently at singing at Severance Hall. And again, I walked out on stage and the room was full of my home crowd and the love was palpable. My husband actually said it was like the audience put their arms around you.
That's a beautiful way to describe that.
It makes me almost tear up.
And you came on with an eye issue, so if we make you tear up, it might make it worse. Speaking of pushing through, you could have said, you know what, I can't do this, and you're like, do it, I don't care.
Yeah, it was a magical night, and I could have died and gone to heaven the next day. I'd have been fine.
Wow. I love that you can identify those moments, which means you've learned to be present and relish your experiences.
Very much so. And I say, when I had my adult students doing this big showcase last night, they were amazing. But I introduced the evening and I always say to them, remember, you won't get tonight again.
Yeah.
Never have tonight again.
That's right.
So enjoy every moment of it. And I think that's what's helped me. There's been tough times in this business, is saying, none of us know if we have tomorrow. Karen Carpenter, none of us know if we have tomorrow. So find some joy in today.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful way to walk through, because whether you're Karen and are struggling with someone or you don't know. Karen didn't know, we don't know.
No.
And spread some of that joy and love. I mean, it sounds cliche, but I think it's darn true.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's the gospel according to us here in Cleveland, right?
Make their day.
Well, I think you make a lot of people's day, not only with your show, but you're just lovely to talk to. You bring such a nice energy. And I've so enjoyed talking to you this morning.
Me too. Good luck with the podcast. It's wonderful what you're doing.
Mr. Postman.
Thank you for exploring hope today on the Mental Health and Eating Disorder podcast.